Now, in one sense, it is just a word to say everything is relative. It's not as a big deal. Like, Mukhtar, you and I want, have, I don't want to say similar ideas. I don't know what you think are the most important issues in the world, but you care about the world. You want to make it a better place. That's way more important to me than some of these fundamental definitions. But as far as I'm concerned, we're doing the quantum physics of philosophy here, and it matters how this stuff comes out. And if you have a system that doesn't work, just because you can make it work over here, that's not good enough. Yeah, that's because it's approximately true. I agree. Your system, all of our systems, have some grains of truth and are approximately true. Just about anything that anybody produces, though there's exceptions, solves some problems, handles some problems well, and therefore is an acceptable approximation. But the thing about relativity is you keep pointing out, well, it's always wrong to cause suffering. Well, except for this situation. That's what relativity means. That's that except for in these other situations. That's what relativity means. And you say, well, the world isn't perfect. The world isn't perfect. Well, why resist? It's not the word relative that you're resisting. You are resisting the concept. You're saying the world is, absolutely a certain way, but nothing's perfect. There are universals. They just don't apply to all situations. The fact is, everything's relative. That's an interesting discovery. Everything is relative. Even whether or not it's right to cause human suffering, that is relative to the situation. And maybe it's scary. It's a bit scary, one of these hard truths, and I'm not kidding, it's scary because maybe it means that you can cause human suffering. Yeah. It means that, but we can face that because it's based on the frame of reference. That's what understanding what relativity is about gets you. It teaches you, well, is there a solution to this terrible problem? Yeah, causing human suffering isn't always okay. It's okay in certain situations. You can study which situations that is, and you'll learn something about what it means to be the exception to these general rules. And we know a lot about relativity now. And we know a lot about physical relativity. And being from nature very directly, this physical relativity, time relativity, Galilean relativity, the relativity in all things, we can learn from how it works at the physical level and learn something about what relativity really means. Because, ancient skeptics believed in relativity, but it never even occurred to them time would be relative. It's a bit of an eye-opener to say time's relative? Well, how does that work? Because this common sense relativity, not good enough. There's some weird kinds of implications from relativity, and they're logical implications. That's why Einstein was able to figure out the theory of relativity by assuming in a thought experiment that things would be relative. He says, well, wait, just in principle, sort of an egalitarian principle, nobody's going in the frame of reference of the universe. Everybody just has their own frame of reference. What does that mean? And he figured out it meant time would have to be relative. Time would warp and be relative to fix what otherwise would have given it away. Which one of these people were in the real absolute frame of reference? And time turned out to be relative. I mean, that's an amazing result, a philosophical result, because he's taking the principle of relativity from antiquity, applying it to the physics, and finding out something incredibly fucking weird. That nobody should have been able to guess. He guessed it by assuming relativity. And then every sentence, every moral sentence that you ever invent is relative to some frame of reference. It depends on the frame of reference. There is no absolute frame of reference. If you had an absolute frame of reference, you wouldn't have this problem. You're seeing the signs of relativity. And it is important. It is very interesting. It's a bit astounding because we don't put relative qualifiers in all of our sentences, do we? But we've discovered that every sentence ought to have one. I mean, that is something to consider. There's a lot of meaning there. And if you do consider it, you'll get a better system of ethics out of it, a better morality. Just like admitting, they had engineering problems during the Dark Ages, but they didn't want to admit that science might play a role. because it was going to make everything just terrible. And they finally use science, and they improve their knowledge. They found out why some of their heuristics actually, rules of thumb actually work. They got some more information. It's the same way here. When we get to a relativistic understanding of ethics and morality, we're going to build moralities that are stronger. We're worried that they're going to get weak, that they were stronger when you had the lie of theism supporting them, and they're going to get weaker without it. With a more true foundation, morality is going to get weaker. That you can only think that if you really think morality is just totally bullshit. But no, was a lot of bullshit in morality, and a lot of people have come to think that because of these theists and their lousy system of morality. You know, it's like medicine with leeches. You know, could turn you off medicine. Though I shouldn't say that because I guess, some people still use leeches. Whatever. If they really work, this wouldn't even be that gross. But whatever. Another subject. No. When we throw away the theism and the objectivism as well, the metaphysicism, because this is all about metaphysics, objective knowledge is another kind of a metaphysics that oversteps what it really knows. Skepticism isn't a metaphysics because it's just saying, I'm perceiving and I'm sorting my perceptions. There's no metaphysics required for that because that's what we actually experience. When we apply relativity to morality, we're not going to get a weaker morality than theism came up with. We're going to have a stronger morality because the reasons for the morality are going to be traced to their true origin, the origin they had all along. The grains of truth that the theists have had, they didn't understand the origin. They misinterpreted it. The true origins have always been our shared frames of reference. It's not going to hurt to admit that relativity plays a role and that subjectivity plays a role. Because we share frames of reference, you see. So not only do I have a subjective outlook, but my family as a unit has a subjective outlook that we share. You can see this in studying our sociology and the anthropology of our daily lives, what we share in terms of our little rituals and ideas and how we come together, and we have a shared frame of reference that gives us a shared subjectivity, and so on for your community and your species and all of the creatures that you're related to. We have shared subjective frames. So if morality is subjective, we just go out into a big enough frame that includes everything we want to share morality with. And you know what that frame is? It's a series of frames because you want to have moralities at every level. I mean, there is a morality of interacting just with humans. But the biggest frame, so far anyway, is the planet. We are cousins with everything living on this planet. We're going to have a shared morality with all of those creatures.